All right, guys, I am so looking forward to this. Now, here's the thing. You know that we've been talking a lot about going after a million dreams this year. And I'm guessing that some of you, deep down on the inside, you were meant for greatness. You were meant to do amazing things, but still there's doubt there. Maybe let's just be honest. Maybe you didn't grow up sitting at the cool kids table. Maybe you didn't grow up looking the way that everybody said you needed to look or talking the way that you needed to talk. Maybe you kind of felt a little dismissed. And that weighs on you a little bit. And if that relates or like connects with you at all, you are so in the right place today. We are talking with one of my absolute favorite new people. We are talking with Jamie Kern Lima. Jeez Louise. How did I blank on that? We're going to start over on that. Oh my gosh. I can't believe
No
it. That's
worries.
hilarious. Fanboy in here. All right. Let's do it over. That is hilarious. All right. Let's do it. I can't believe it. All right. So guys, I am so excited about this conversation. And here's the deal. You know, we're talking a lot about going after a million dreams this year. And as if you thought about your dreams, if you've been thinking about going after something and you know that you're meant for greatness, you're meant to go after something amazing, but there's still doubts inside. Maybe you didn't grow up at the cool kids table. Maybe you didn't look the way you were supposed to look or talk the way you were supposed to talk. Well, I'll tell you what, if you can resonate, connect with that at all, I've got somebody that's going to be able to help today. We are going to be talking with Jamie Kern Lima. She just wrote my new favorite book. It is called Believe It, How to Go from Underestimated to Unstoppable. Now, you may be familiar with some of the more recent chapters in Jamie's life and her trajectory. Let me list off just a few. Here's the thing. Jamie and her husband, Paulo, they took It Cosmetics from something they launched from their living room. They started in 2008 and really, built this thing from the ground up. And it's become a brand that truly has changed things within the industry. More importantly, it has empowered women around the world. Now, what's cool about it is not just their story, but the results of their story, which is incredible. They went from being completely dismissed within the industry, so many naysayers within this industry, to building something that they eventually sold to L'Oreal for over $1 billion. That's right, with a B. They also, Jamie became the first female CEO in L'Oreal's 100+ year history to become a CEO. How about that? And I'll tell you what, with her continued growth, leadership, impact within the company, It Cosmetics has become the #1 luxury makeup brand in the country. So all of those things, absolutely amazing. But one of the things that she does so beautifully in this book, Believe It, is she helps to show that she didn't start this journey overly confident, knowing exactly the steps she was going to need to take. She absolutely started and said, I'll figure it out as I go. And she has done that, defied the naysayers, and gone from underdog to a force of good, an unstoppable force of good. So I'm so excited about this conversation. So let's get to it. Jamie, welcome to Dream, Think, Do.
Mitch, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So here's the thing, you've done such amazing things with It Cosmetics. And I know, we've talked a little bit about it this year. We're working on, inspiring people to go after a million dreams together, to help each other, all of that. And I think it's so easy to look at somebody like yourself and say, okay, you took something from scratch. Literally, you and your husband, Paulo, started in your living room and you eventually sold it for over $1 billion. It would be easy for people to say, oh my gosh, she probably wanted a cosmetics company when she was 2. Maybe she started when she was 5, right? But that was not necessarily the dream to start with. Tell us a little
Right.
bit of how this blossomed.
Yeah, it wasn't the dream at all. And I get messages every single day, usually on Instagram, saying, did you get lucky? Did you have connections? It's like, no, none of that. And I realize so often we just see the outcomes of things when they're, or the highlight reel. And that's why I'm excited to do your show and
Yeah.
also just write this book. Because I think like sharing the real journey helps everyone else when they're launching their own dream, or maybe they're scared to go after their own dream. helps them feel less alone. So yeah, one thing you've talked about in one of your shows about this idea of sometimes our setbacks become our setups.
Yes.
That's really what happened to me when I launched this dream in my living room. And just to share a little bit about that, just for anyone in your community listening right now, especially if, like, they're feeling they're in the season of setback
Yeah.
or in the midst of a setback.
Right.
That's really how this whole thing started. So I thought I was working in my dream job. And, since I was a little girl, I always would, sit in my living room and watch Oprah. And I always thought, like, oh, one day I'm going to share other people's stories with the world. Like, I always want to do that. And I was working in television news as a news anchor, and thought I was in my dream job. And I started going through a season of setback, what I thought was a big setback. I got a skin condition called rosacea, which my skin is bright, it gets bright red with bumps everywhere. Sometimes it feels like sandpaper. And so I went to the dermatologist and I learned there's no cure for it. And I'd be anchoring the news. I tried all this stuff to try and calm it down. But I'd be anchoring the news and often live. While I'd be on the air, in my earpiece, I would hear from my producer, there's something on your face. There's something on your face. You need to wipe it off. You need to wipe it. And I knew,
which
like,
I'm
Mitch,
sure totally helped you to focus and calm down, right? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and then it's like when we go through these times, I started this kind of season of self-doubt where I would, like, my inner critic got so loud, and I would be live anchoring the news thinking things like, am I going to get fired? Am I losing our viewers, changing the channel? I went through this whole season, started trying to find any makeup product out there. I never had even an interest in going in creating a beauty company. But I started, trying every product out there, and none of them would work. And I had this kind of moment where I had this kind of this gut feeling. Like, I think when dreams start to brew in us, or when there's like a seed planted in us where we have this dream, it kind of started that way, where I was like it was like a little inkling, like, wait a minute, if I could figure out how to launch it, how to create a product that works for me, I bet it'd help a lot of other people.
Yeah.
And then I would kind of like silence that dream, and my head would take over. Oh, Jamie, you have no connections. You have barely any money. You don't know anything about the beauty industry. And you're in your dream job right now.
Yeah.
Right. And so I went through that battle. And I think everyone listening to us right now probably, like, really, if they get still, they probably know right now, if there's a dream on their heart, or something they know they're supposed to create or go after or offer the world, or start painting again or start dancing, right? They kind of know. But sometimes our head talks ourselves out of our own dreams.
Yeah.
So
We
I
call
was in
that
the moment.
essence of a dream, right? Like that, because I think sometimes even the word dream, it feels too heavy, too big. Like people are like, oh, I can't go after that dream, or I don't know all that's there, or all that it will take. And it's like, all right, we'll just lean into that essence of the dream. And I love how you gave yourself that permission to first kind of look solutions for yourself, but then to be able to say, what if? What if? And I love too how it seems like very quickly after that, you also started to say, what if we did it differently? Because that was really something you started to do very early on, to be able to say, hey, a lot of the marketing, a lot of the ads around cosmetics don't seem to be all that real, or for real women. And I love how that really started to become a mission for you as well. How quickly after getting the essence of the dream and starting to walk it out, was that why of being able to say, all right, this is, I'm doing this for someone else too. How soon did that happen for you?
Yeah, I realized in the midst of, like, why can't I find anything that works for me, when I started trying to try all these products, I realized, oh wow, my whole life I've never seen anyone in the ads that looks like me, that has skin problems, right? You just see photoshopped ads, and I kind of realized that there was never a product that works for me, but also never a product that even showed people with skin like me. And I want to say something that you said in the very open of our conversation, I think is really powerful, especially for anyone listening. You said, maybe you've never sat at the cool kids club or the cool kids table at school. Right. And I just want to say, for anyone who feels like they don't fit in, or they maybe don't belong, or they're not like everyone else, I really believe, Mitch, that can be your superpower, because I think like I came into this beauty industry and I didn't fit in, and I was
Mm,
not. I mean, I didn't realize launching this company how it would be 3 years of being told no from all the retailers, and that because everyone sees, oh wow, because today at this moment that you and I are talking right now, It Cosmetics is the largest luxury makeup company in the country, which is insane
it's
because for
amazing.
3 years, every beauty retailer said no, you're
Yeah.
not the right fit. Women won't buy makeup from models that look like that. On and on and on. Change your packaging, change, right? They and I think that why we eventually were acquired by L'Oreal for so much money is because we ended up doing something so different
Yeah.
that like and unique and odd that didn't fit in, but that people connected with, that it ended up being valuable to
Yeah.
them. And I just think so many people listening right now, we're always told often in our lives to fit in and to conform, and sometimes when we fit in, it can actually be a disadvantage in a way because we
Mm,
start thinking the same. Do you know what
right.
I mean? And
Absolutely.
I don't know, I just, sorry, that just like came out because I just think anyone feeling like they don't fit in, I think if you stick to who you are authentically, I really feel like that is when you step in the calling on your life. Like, right. And I think like it's so tempting for us because we all want love, we all want
Right.
connection, we all want those things. And it's tempting to do it at the price of who we are.
Yeah.
And when I look back at this journey, um, about turning a dream into something that impacted now millions of lives, I think that there were moments when people told me to change what we were doing, change that was never going to work, that if I
Yeah.
wanted to get in their stores, I had to do it the way they wanted me to do it. And those are the moments that I think could have stopped this whole thing from happening
Right.
had I listened. You know what I mean? And I don't know, just want to share that.
Well, I
Um,
love that. I love that one, you would hone in on that because I so agree with that. But also I think that you make that point so well in the book of being able to take those things that maybe you've seen as your limitations or your doubts or the things that have caused you fear, that if we just look at those a little bit differently, they literally can be our superpower. And I agree with you. I think, I mean, especially with the story, and I confessed to you before we hit record that I've not worn your makeup. I'm not an expert on the cosmetic industry, all of those things. But what I love about your story, and the more that I've dug into it, it truly is, obviously you've put together an incredible product, but the way that you've gone about it and doing it differently, which I think in some ways you had to like bolster yourself. You had to push through those no's. Those no's made you even more like, I don't know if it's the right word to say solid, but to be able to say, hey, we are choosing this. We are not doing this by accident. We are not doing this because it's easy. We're doing it because we feel like that's the right way to do it. And that's bolstered you to help you then navigate the storm. And I do want to say that, some people might hear this and go, "Oh my gosh, they went from their living room to selling it, the company to L'Oreal for $1 billion." It's like, oh, that's an overnight story. It's all those things. You guys, we're talking about hundreds of hours of week, working hard, paying yourself very little to nothing, um, and really fighting for this dream, which
yeah.
I think is also beautiful. And you've also surrounded yourself with incredible people. Now, I've gotten some questions from listeners. We're going to go after those in just a second. But one of the
Okay.
things is, I think what I loved about your story is that, so many things about your story, but you got the essence of the dream. You started to experiment. You saw the need. You saw the need to offer a product, but also promote that product, present that product in a different way. But I was curious because so many people get the essence of the dream and immediately see the list of things they don't know or don't have, right?
Mm.
What's one of the ways, do you think, like, what was key for you to give yourself that permission to say, I don't have all the answers, I don't have all the connections, I certainly don't have the big bank account? What gave you, or how did you find that within yourself to be able to say, but I'm going to take that next step?
Yeah. Well, I think sometimes, and I talk about this and believe it a lot, that I think sometimes knowing when to let go of a dream is as important as knowing when to go after
Mm,
one. And
yeah.
while I was in that spot of going, okay, my gut, my essence, so to speak, is telling me to launch this company, but my head is saying you're not qualified,
Right.
you don't have the right connections, all that. When I look back, I and by the way, when you talk about, the early years, it was 3 years of hundreds of no's, and we got, we couldn't afford to pay ourselves the first 3 years of our company. If we ever had a date night, which was a miracle, we
That's
would
right.
go literally to the Costco, the outdoor Costco concession stand. We get a
Oh,
dollar hot
absolutely.
dogs.
Yeah. You
Like
can get a
that
lot for
was
a
like
couple of bucks at the Costco. That's exactly right.
at least, and it tastes good, which is the good part. But that would be a date. I mean, it was really tough. And there were so many nights I cried myself to sleep because it was another big no from a
Yeah.
retailer, or I didn't know how we were going to keep the lights on. It was a lot of years. And in the book, and believe it, I go into details about like some of the scrappy things we did, like how, we figured out how to do things when we couldn't afford to hire people. And I go into that because I think it's so important, because
Yeah.
you don't see that stuff on social media. You
You
just see
don't.
everyone's highlight reel. And I just think like it's important for people that might, feel like it's just them struggling or not getting traction or hearing rejection after rejection. And when I look back at all of this, and I talk about so many things I did wrong in the book, but one of the things that I did do right, it wasn't that I somehow was smarter than someone else or anything
Yeah.
like that. It was really that when I would get still and I would
Mm,
hear my own gut feeling, which for me is
yeah.
how I hear God
Yep.
talk to me, is in my intuition, right? But some people may call it the universe. Some people might call it
That's
just their
right.
own internal knowing, right? When I would hear that internal knowing, I would make the decision to trust it. And for
Wow.
me, that was one of the biggest things, because there were nights I literally would just cry myself to sleep. And I'd wake up in the morning thinking, like, oh, was that huge rejection from QVC really real, or was that a dream? And then I'd realize it was real.
Very real.
And I'd be
Yeah.
like,
Very,
no.
very real.
And I mean, there were some really tough rejections. About 2 years into the business, we got a call from a potential investor that was a big private equity company. And I was so excited because they had a huge track record of making all of these products in grocery stores, big household names, and they
Wow.
loved our product, and they wanted a meeting. And we did a meeting, and then we showed them our product pipeline. And, we were several meetings in, and I thought, wow, if they invest in us, A, I'm not going to go bankrupt, and B, maybe they can use their connections to get us in these big beauty
Right.
retailers that keep
Right.
telling me no. And we got down to the final meeting, and I'll never forget this moment, because my husband and I flew up for this meeting, and we were standing about 3 feet from the head investor. And he says to me, congratulations, we really, really think your product is fantastic. But it's a no, we're going to pass on investing in It Cosmetics. And we want to wish you all the best. And when I said, okay, can you tell me why?
Yeah.
Because feedback is usually a gift. And he was literally about 3 feet from me in person. And he says, do you want me to be really, really honest with you? And I said, yes, please. And he said, I just don't think women will buy makeup from someone who looks like you with your body and your weight. And I
Wow.
remember, Mitch, in that moment, here's the thing. So two things. One, I went out in the car and cried later, but I instantly felt, like a lifetime of self-doubt and body
Yeah.
doubt. All those things kind of flood my body. But I'll never forget this moment when he was saying that to me. Of course it hurt.
Yeah.
But when he said, I just don't think women will buy makeup from someone who looks like you with your body and your weight, I got this feeling inside. And I can remember it like it was yesterday, that just said, he's wrong.
Yeah.
And I actually never got mad, or it was weird. When you talked about the why earlier, because we all
Yeah.
identify, it's so important to attach a why to any dream. And but I did the work early on of identifying, like, really, why am I doing this company? And it wasn't just to create a great product or to solve my own problems or to help other women, which was certainly all those things, but I wanted to shift culture in the beauty industry. I
Yeah.
wanted to create a business where if I ever were going to make it, I wanted to use models that we're all different ages and skin tones and skin and sizes and skin challenges. And I wanted to shift that definition of beauty for every little girl out there who's about to see these ads and start doubting herself the way I did growing up, and every grown woman who still does and person who still does. So I knew how important my why was to me.
Yep.
So when this guy says to me that, I realized, instead of getting mad, I think this is really important when we're going after our dreams, to not take rejection personally.
Yeah.
Because I realized him saying that to me, him passing on investing in my business, was really, he was just as much impacted by a life of the beauty industry as I was.
Yep.
He was making an investment decision based on what he thinks you need to look like to sell product. And so, you know, and one more thing.
I love it. No.
Well, 6 years, I didn't hear from him for about 6 years. And 6 years later, when L'Oreal acquired our company, because it was such a big deal and L'Oreal's public, they
Right.
disclosed the purchase price. So all of a sudden, in this one day, it's all over the Wall Street Journal homepage, everywhere. Like, It Cosmetics, you know, L'Oreal buys It Cosmetics for $1.2 billion cash, this whole big thing. And I heard from him that day for the first time in 6 years. And he said, congratulations, I'm so happy for you. I was wrong, this whole thing. And
Wow.
I learned it would have been the most successful investment in this firm's history. But the other thing, and this is just, I want to share this in case anyone listening to you and me right now, like, is in
Yeah.
this season of rejection, right? Is there's these famous words, and I don't even know who said them, but they're famous words that say rejection is God's protection.
Yeah.
And like, when we're going through rejection, we don't, like, doesn't feel very good, doesn't feel
Right.
at the time, like, how is this protecting me? Especially when it's unfair, it's hurtful, it sucks. But like, and I have so many examples of this in Believe
Yep.
It, but the book, but just this one story is like, had he believed in me, Mitch, I was so desperate, I probably would have given him most of the company for almost no
Absolutely.
money.
Yep.
But because he didn't believe in me, 6 years later, my husband and I were still the largest shareholders when we sold to L'Oreal. And it just, I don't know, I just think that there's so many stories like that, where I just think it's important that we have our perspective of faith
Yeah.
also, when we're going through those tough seasons.
Well, and I so agree, because it is that whole thing of, and I think you and I share a very similar faith, which is awesome. And we've got people from all different faith backgrounds, but it is so powerful when we start to realize that those setbacks, sometimes that adversity, although it is brutal when you're in it, like, I can only imagine that felt like a real punch to the gut. But
Yeah.
think about, like you said, that adversity in some ways is something you needed to dig even deeper. In some ways, it like proved your thesis even
Yeah.
more, of saying this absolutely needs to be fixed. And if somebody's going to do it differently, we got to do it. Right. And I also,
Yeah.
it did also protect you from then giving up a majority stake and all of those things. It's just incredible, but it's not easy, but it's
Right.
amazing. And I agree with you. You have so many different examples. And that's, I think I loved it in the book. So many different examples where that adversity, that setback, time and time again, really was a setup. And we could go, I'm so glad our interview is going to get to be 4 hours long, because we've got so many things to cover. I wish it was. We're going to have you back for sure. Now, I've got some listener lightning round questions, because when I put out that you were going to be on the show, I had a number of people, just, you are so loved and so many people are so excited about this book. But what I love is that I wanted to get to some of these questions. One of the things, one question came from Tim Johnson over on Instagram, and he said, all right, what has he had to unlearn during this process? I know you've learned so much. What's one thing you've had to unlearn during this process?
So I've had to unlearn that being independent and a lone wolf, and I don't need to
Yeah.
count on anyone else, and I've got this, that's a badge of honor. I've had to unlearn that,
Yeah.
because I talk about some deeply personal stuff in the book. You know,
Incredible.
it's not just a business book. It's not just a how do you go after your dreams book. It's also really a book about how do you overcome self-doubt?
Yep.
How do you go from not believing in yourself to believing in yourself, and not trusting yourself to trusting yourself? And one of the big lessons I learned in this book through a personal journey of infertility and of adoption and surrogacy and all kinds of stuff, was that life isn't meant to do alone. And my whole life, I've always kind of thought like, oh, I've got this. I'm just going to count on me. I don't need to ask anyone else for help. Being independent is this badge of honor. And for anyone who's a lone wolf out there, this might resonate with them too. But I had a huge realization that I talk about in the book that for me, it wasn't a badge of being a lone wolf, wasn't a badge of honor. That it was actually a deep-seated fear that I'm not worthy of other people showing up for me.
Wow.
And I had this big epiphany over that. And I had to unlearn this idea that I got this all alone and that I don't need to ask for help, or that I'm not worthy of asking for other people to show up for me the way I show up for them.
Yeah.
I needed to unlearn that. And it's something I still work on every single day. Even in this book launch for Believe It, it was a challenge for me to go, you know what? Let me ask for some of my friends to show up for me and support me in different ways. And let me figure out how to make sure I feel worthy of asking them to. It's still something that I am unlearning and working on every single day. So I talk a lot about that journey in the book, but
And I so appreciate, as somewhat of an introvert that is also probably leans lone wolf, I so appreciated that in the story, and you again illustrated beautifully with a lot of transparency and some raw stories. But I also loved in the book how obviously some of those folks that have come alongside you, that have been along with you and Paulo in this journey, how beautiful it was for them to share in the journey, but also how wonderful it was for you to then be able to share the reward, the payoff, right? And had you not been, if you'd stayed with that lone wolf approach, it's interesting. I think as lone wolves, it's easy to think, well, I'm not going to be a burden for somebody else. But sometimes being a lone wolf is actually being more selfish, right? So you were able to be a huge blessing in so many of your team members' lives because you did open yourself up that way. And it's great. You're going to have to read the book to know that whole story. But it is so true. I love it. Now here, Shayla Atkins asked another question, which I think is so great. She's a big fan as well. And what she's interested in is, obviously you've worked very hard. It is now this incredible brand, like you said, #1 luxury cosmetic brand in the country, all of those things. But you're a mom, you're a human being, all of those things. Shayla's like, how does she stay grounded? How does she still stay true to herself? As these big things are happening for you, how do you stay grounded? How do you stay true to Jamie?
Yeah. I think that, yeah, it's been a wild journey. Like in the days where I was a waitress at Denny's, I don't know if I could have ever imagined some of the stuff that I've gone through in the past couple of years happening. I stay grounded in my faith, and I believe a couple of things. I believe all of us are on this earth not to achieve things or get significance or accomplish things. I think we're here to compete with only who the person God made us capable of becoming is. And I stay grounded in my faith, and I try to listen to that still small voice inside and trust it. And what I mean by that is a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago now, I had this huge moment, Mitch. I don't think I've ever talked about this, maybe with a friend, but and because I spent years building the company in our living room, and I'll never forget our first office. And we outgrew it so fast, but everyone's desks became like, if you got hired as a new employee, we would take a huge FedEx box or UPS box. That was your desk, because we were out of space.
Congratulations, right?
Yes,
exactly.
Welcome to It Cosmetics. It was so scrappy for so long. And we eventually moved into bigger offices and bigger offices. And about a year and a half, 2 years ago, we had just moved into a 60,000 square foot office.
Wow.
I had this moment where I was sitting there, and L'Oreal acquired us in 2016, and I stayed on as CEO. And doubled the size of the company the first 2 years post-acquisition, just poured my heart into it
Yeah.
because I believe in our mission. I believe in everything L'Oreal is doing and the It Cosmetics team is doing, and just poured my heart and soul. And there was this moment where I was sitting in my brand new office
Hmm.
in looking around at what the world tells me success and significance are. It was like this corner office overlooking the skyline of Manhattan. It looks like something I grew up seeing only in movies,
Right.
with the most beautiful art everywhere. And this, like, my corner office is bigger than almost any place I've ever lived in, right? And I'm sitting there, no, really, and I'm
Yeah.
sitting there, and I have a moment. I just want to share this with anyone listening. I have
Mm.
this moment where I feel, this is how I hear God. I feel like I'm supposed, I'm done. Like all of
Wow.
a sudden it was all there, and it was a brand new office, right? And I knew if I stayed, I love the team. I love the team so much. But everything's a well-oiled machine now.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I could stay and have the glamorous parts of everything, have the big office, have all the stuff, the biggest brand in the country. And I just felt this calling, like this calling on my heart that says, you're supposed to serve in a whole different way now. And, I'd said no to
Wow.
writing a book for years because I didn't want to ghostwrite. I wanted to write every word myself
Yeah.
if I was ever going to do it. And I just had this feeling like you're supposed, now that you've gotten to this spot and you have all the fancy stuff now, if you stay in that, it could come at the price of the calling on your life. And
Wow.
but I think a lot of people, we get tempted when stuff is what the world tells us matters.
Yeah.
And I made the decision. I sobbed my eyes out in that office.
Wow.
And I was just looking around at everything because I couldn't even believe how beautiful it was. This is the first time I ever stepped foot in this office. And I went in on a weekend all alone, and it was all done.
No kidding.
My It Cosmetics assistant was there too with me. And I was just sobbing in there because I couldn't believe how beautiful it was. But I also knew in my heart
Yeah.
that it was time to serve in a different way. And I made the
Wow.
decision to step away from this dream I'd built in my living room, because I have tried to live my whole life that way. And I think everyone listening right now, like, it comes in all different forms for us, right? It
Yep.
might be like stepping into a dream, stepping away from one, start again. I used this example earlier, but starting to paint again, started like
Yep.
writing the first page of your book. Like, I feel like the most important decisions in life come down to when we trust ourselves. So anyhow, yeah, that happened.
Ah,
And
I love that. Thank you for being generous to share that story, because, and I think that's also such a beautiful picture that what I love, and it's been such an honor to be, with Dream, Think, Do, we've been able to talk with so many people about their journeys. And I so appreciate you being real with us yet again, in the book and then here. But I think that's a great picture too, that like, as we walk out dreams, it's so often that next thing, which some might say is the next dream, is revealed only as a part of the journey, right? Like, you wouldn't have gotten that had you not continued to walk out the journey. And so to be able to say, hey, isn't that part of the adventure too, of being able to say, I wonder what future journeys will be. I wonder what will be
yes.
revealed as we step further into this thing. And so I'm getting goosebumps as you tell that story. So I'm so honored that you'd be here. I'm so honored you'd share that particular story. And I think it's going to so resonate with Dream, Think, Doers. So guys, we have been talking with Jamie Kern Lima. The book is called Believe It. I'll be honest with you, Jamie. I have the book. I have it on my Kindle, and Dream, Think, Doers, buy the book, but also grab it on Audible, because Jamie actually reads the thing and you feel like you're sitting there having coffee or a glass of wine, or wine in a coffee cup, as she talks you through it. And it's fantastic. So Jamie, thanks so much for doing what you're doing. Thanks for continuing to say yes to this dream and to the next, and for doing what you're doing in the world.
You too. And thank you so much. Thank you for having me. And this was so fun.
This
It
was
flew by.
fun.
It was so fun. We should do a 4-hour one day.
Let's do it. All right. We'll bring
This is
Paulo
so
in on
good,
that
Nick.
one.
Sounds good.
I love it.
He can talk for 4 hours. I'm the introvert like you, actually.
I love it.
He's extroverted. He would,
We'll
yeah.
plan on that. We'll give him his own mic and rock that thing. I love it.
Totally.